Bailey on 100.3. We've got Madonna in from New Leaf Natural Therapies, and we're talking all things natural when it comes to Aspergers and autism.
Yeah.
Now, just recap quickly. You said
Absolutely.
there was a connection.
Yes, between the gut-brain. So there's a gut-brain connection with autism and Aspergers, and then also the brain is inflamed. As a general rule, if you've got a child with these issues, think inflammation. What can we do to reduce that inflammation? Going back about 10, 12 years ago when it really started increasing, because I think I was at seminars every year for about 4 years where we were talking autism and Aspergers, and it was doubling every year. So, you know, it's one of the, and that's the same thing that's happening with, say, diabetes and dementia. It's every 3 years, I think, that they're doubling.
Yeah.
So we've just got this inflammatory something going on in our lifestyles at the moment, probably no surprise. I was listening to a podcast on the way and they were talking about cortisol, because one of the things when our brains are inflamed is that are we running on too much cortisol? So cortisol is a stress hormone, and it's one of the hormones that our adrenal glands make. But there's this whole big thing going on in your brain with the hypothalamus, the pituitary, adrenal, thyroid axis, and something is telling our brains that life is dangerous. Why are we releasing all this cortisol? Cortisol destroys the gut lining, so it creates leaky gut. And then when we've got leaky gut, we can have a leaky blood-brain barrier, so that things can get across the blood-brain barrier that really shouldn't, that I don't think was such a problem 40 years ago.
That's
as
right,
they
yeah.
are now.
And
So-
the blood-brain barrier is there for a protective
Oh,
reason,
yeah.
to stop anything really bad harming our brain. So
Absolutely.
when we're affected by this, it gets in easy.
Exactly. And there was one small study with kids this was about 10 years ago, but they were looking at kids with autism specifically, and they did biopsies of their brains when they had passed away, and they found that there were bacteria in the basal ganglia in the brain. So basically it was generally staph or strep. So, and those two bacteria, how rife are they in children, just as a general rule?
And they're pretty much on everything and everything. Like
Exactly.
Everything we touch or breathe in.
Yes, so I think our immune systems are not as strong as they used to be for all sorts of reasons. One of the things that I did hear as well is that a lot of the seeds that we're planting these days to grow, so genetically modified seeds, often have pesticides in them. So then when the actual plant grows, there's pesticides, but those pesticides are linked to destroying gut bacteria as well. So once again, it's another thing. And if you think about the fact that 90% of our immune system's in the gut, this is why organic food can be one of the keys for these kids. Because if we are taking in pesticides every day that are destroying our gut bacteria, and we've already got an inflamed brain going on, so if we're messing with our gut bacteria on a moment-by-moment basis, then the immune system can't cope with things like staph and strep, and therefore the kids need more antibiotics. So, you know, it becomes this horrible cycle where the poor little gut's getting more and more inflamed, and so is the brain.
Yeah.
I've actually had kids who, when they had antibiotics, when they were on antibiotics, things like their eczema cleared up or their asthma was better and things like. So if you think about gut inflammation and why, obviously as a natural therapist I don't push antibiotics by any stretch of the imagination, but it's an interesting thing when people's symptoms actually improve when they're taking these drugs, because obviously something inflammatory is going on in the gut on a regular basis, that when you take a drug it actually improves the symptoms. So it's really about sorting out, well, what's going on in the gut that's causing the inflammation, that antibiotics help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys obviously discuss that from the start of the consultation.
Oh, yeah.
When people come in to talk about
Absolutely.
natural therapies.
Yeah, definitely. So when people come in, quite often I will sort of say, yeah, but when did the symptoms start? You know, and sometimes the parents know it was when the kids got mono, or they got, you know, something as a kid. You know, they started getting ear infections and then their behaviour started to change, or, you know, quite often they know when something happened. So it's, you know, like controversially, you know, there's a lot of information out there about vaccinations, but once again, it's only one trigger, and it's only if there's a whole bunch of other things going on in there at the same time. So when I talk to my parents about vaccines, I say protect the gut. Make sure you've got good gut bacteria going on in there. Make sure you've got things in there that help to pull the heavy metals out. You want that vaccine to work if you're going to go the vaccination route. So therefore you want the gut to be as strong as it can. You want the immune system to be as strong as it can, so that you get the best benefit you can from those vaccines.
Yeah.
But there's things that you can do to actually support the gut, support the brain. Things like fish oils. There is so much information about fish oils and the brain. So EPA is so in fish oils there's two major components, DHA and EPA. EPA is anti-inflammatory, DHA regenerates the brain and the eyes. So when we and once again, going back 10, 12 years ago, things were heaps simpler from a naturopathic perspective. And if you gave kids, say, 2 grams of EPA a day, that made a massive amount of difference. But I just think everything is more challenging these days. The food supplies, the lifestyle, the stresses.
I think we're also learning so much more. Like, it's all in our face, the information, and sometimes we can get very overwhelmed with what's out there. So, you know, people that are listening to us right now that want to know, you know, they've probably been thinking about natural therapies for a while. At least they know you guys can start them from the beginning, explain to them the relationship between their gut and
you don't
effects.
And you don't do everything at once.
No.
And no one can do everything at once. It's doing it one step at a time. Let's work out the most important thing and start from there.
And if you can do everything at once, let us know so we know how to do it.
Good tip.
27 minutes past 11 coming.